Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the September 2nd, 2014 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. It is my privilege to call this meeting to order. There are copies of our agenda on either side of the room on the little ledges that you see protruding out there against the wall. If you have not already done so, please help yourself to a copy of the agenda and follow along with our proceedings tonight. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment, both with respect to items that are appearing on our agenda tonight, as well as a segment under item 4, which is reserved for public comments of a general nature with respect to items not appearing on our agenda tonight. So folks who have questions or comments of a general nature with respect to items not appearing on our agenda tonight, section 4 is your section. We will be there pretty quickly. We've got a few items to take care of beforehand, not the least of which our proud custom of beginning our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So at this point in time, I'd like to ask everyone in the audience to please rise and join us in reciting the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much for joining us in that. And now I'd like to ask our fine village clerk, April Holden, to please call the roll.
Commissioner Jose?
Here.
Commissioner Olson?
Here.
Commissioner Rankin?
Here.
Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Commissioner Neustadt?
Here.
Commissioner Durkin?
Here.
Mayor Tully?
Here. Thank you very much for that. That brings us to item 3, which pertains to the minutes of council meetings. Prior council meetings today, so we have a number of sets of minutes to review and approve for tonight. Our executive session minutes for approval only from August 12, 2014. Our regular council meeting minutes from August 19th, 2014. And the always important long-range plan meeting minutes from August 19th, 2014 as well. Are there any changes, questions, comments, or corrections from any members of the Village Council with respect to any of those minutes? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Right before we get to the public comments, because I want to make sure everyone remembers that number 4 is coming right up, I do have a proclamation to read tonight. And I would like to do that and then present it to the Northern Illinois Food Bank. And we have a representative here tonight from that organization, which we're glad to have you here. Proclamation reads as follows. Whereas Northern Illinois Food Bank is a nonprofit organization that engages the community in commitment to feed our hungry neighbors. And whereas Northern Illinois Food Bank provides meals to over 60,000 different people each week through a network of food pantries, soup kitchens, shelters, and youth and senior feeding programs, including over 80 in DuPage County. And whereas September is Hunger Action Month, where Northern Illinois Food Bank and over 200 food banks across the country are hosting awareness campaigns and events to bring attention and to take action for the cause of hunger. And whereas September 4th, 2014 is National Go Orange Day, now, therefore, I, Martin T. Tully, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, do hereby proclaim September 2014 as Hunger Action Month in the Village of Downers Grove. And Chris DeSmet is here tonight from the Northern Illinois Food Bank to accept the proclamation. Chris, if you could please come up. Thank you very much. We'll take you right down here in front where the TV cameras are.
Okay.
Please, right in the middle. All the good folks at home can see you. We're happy to present this to you.
Thank you so much, Mayor.
And I'm going to shake your hand. And then, of course, I'd love to invite you up to the podium if you have a few words you'd like to share with us. That way, the microphone will ensure that everyone at home can hear you. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. This is really wonderful. And I love the trees. I love Downers Grove. I am a local person myself. I do want to thank you on behalf of nearly 77% of the people who come to our food pantries in DuPage County every year who are working. Thank you on behalf of 62% of those people who come to the food pantries who are making choices between buying their medication, paying for their utilities, or getting food. Thank you on behalf of all of us at Northern Illinois Food Bank and the network, as you mentioned through the proclamation, of charities that we work with. I also would like to thank Downers Grove Fish, who has representatives in our audience today. They are very close and longtime members with the food bank, and we couldn't do the work we do were it not for their hands. I dropped off some food collection boxes on my way in tonight, so I encourage all the departments to get a competition going. There is a food drive in the entire month of September. And don't forget, on Thursday, go orange. Change your light bulbs, change your dress, change your shirt, change your tie. Orange is Hunger Action color, and we're very, very, very hopeful that a lot of people will begin to recognize and associate this color. This proclamation is more than a piece of paper. It really is a symbol of hope for so many of our hungry neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. And thank you sincerely from all of us for all that you and the Northern Illinois Food Bank do for our area and our community. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you for all your good work in that regard. That is the only proclamation we have tonight, so that brings us to item 4, which is reserved for public comments of a general nature. At this point in time, if there are any members of the audience that have any questions or comments of a general nature, I would invite you to please come up to the podium. The protocol is to give us your name and address, and then we would welcome hearing from you. So please, members of the audience, questions or comments? I see we have a few folks making their way to the podium now.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Tully. Good evening. My name is Teresa, T-H-E-R-E-S-A, Barron Kulat, K-U-L-A-T. I reside at 4440 Saratoga Avenue, and I own a small business at 5116 Forest Avenue, both in Downers Grove. In 1992, I graduated from law school, got married, moved to Downers Grove, and began my legal career as a municipal attorney. My first several years of practicing law, I represented units of local government, fire protection districts, school districts, townships, villages. I have advised the Village of Oak Lawn Planning and Development Commission and the Village of Oak Lawn Zoning Board of Appeals. Before my children were born, I sat and served on the Downers Grove Board of Police and Fire Commissioners. I understand the legal framework and the limitations that you, as commissioners and the mayor, face. I'm here today to speak on behalf of the Edwards House located at 942 Maple. And first, I would like to give you my sincere thanks for all that you do, both staff and elected officials. I know that it takes time, energy, and commitment to come here every day and to engage in the conversations that you need to engage in. I understand that running a village includes a variety of activities. Your attention must be on things like fire and police, feeding the hungry, economic development, tear downs, traffic, stormwater. All of these things require our attention, but we cannot put our attention on all of them at once. Tonight, we would like to direct your attention to preserving the character, the history, and the beauty of Downers Grove. The ordinance in place currently to provide protection to historic buildings in Downers Grove requires that an action be initiated by the landowner. Rather than balancing public and private interests, I submit that the current ordinance gives all the power to the landowners and gives no power to the people. The facts surrounding the Edwards House is a perfect example. It appears that an out-of-state bank will sell the Edwards House to a non-resident buyer, and our community will lose a gem. The only way to stop it is, as you pointed out in an earlier meeting, if the people of this city take action, and it looks as though they would need to band together and file a successful petition to create a historic district if there is going to be any chance to save that property. The general citizens of this town will not be able to do anything. To continue my personal story, I have 2 boys. One just graduated from North with your son. My other son is at Herrick Middle School. I participate in park district activities. In fact, my office was located in 942 Maple, across the street from Lincoln Center. It's a lovely community next door to the Kings, who are here tonight. I call this community my home because it has a lot to offer. When I was in that building, it was owned by a man named Chuck Hannon, who took immaculate care of the building, had the lower level as a conference room and a remote office for himself. All 6 of the suites were rented out, paying nice rent, and the top floor was Michael's Driving School. Many people had their children go through Michael's Driving School. The people who attended, who come to my office, who came to the office there, were residents of this town. Mr. Flynn, when he purchased the building in 2007, planned to move the 2 buildings and construct office condominiums. The economic downturn and other circumstances thwarted this project. Fast forward to today, these historic homes sit on land that is zoned downtown business, which means that, as things stand, the property owners can do whatever they want without regard to the historic significance of the buildings or the degree to which demolishing it will alter the character of the neighborhood. I commend Tom Nybo and the Pierce Downers Heritage Alliance for taking up this cause. I urge the property owners who live and own property on Maple Avenue to join in the application to create a historic district. I encourage all residents who care about preserving the character, the history, and the beauty of Downers Grove to join in the Pierce Downer Heritage Alliance. And I ask that the council please amend the village code to allow citizen-initiated designation of historic buildings to be preserved. Finally, it has come to my attention that the Tivoli Theater is not protected. Perhaps the unfortunate circumstances today were meant to shed light on this reality, this injustice, that a private landowner can destroy something in order to make more money and in the process rob our community, our children, and future generations of these priceless treasures. So for that reason, again, I ask that the appropriate action be taken. That's it.
Thank you very much for your comments, and this is no reflection of anyone's comments tonight, but so we don't have different people coming up expressing different views and it goes back and forth, let's try to keep the applause outside of the maintained decorum here and not have applause after various speakers. There may be a speaker that comes up and says something you disagree with, and we wouldn't want to have boos and things of that nature. So in order to keep it just even-keeled, if I could ask everyone, no matter how eloquent and moving the speaker might be, if they could perhaps hold their applause to another time, that would be greatly appreciated. We are trying to just maintain general respect and decorum for everybody, not to suggest that anything you just did was anything other than that, but just for future reference. Good evening, Mr. Waldeck.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. For the record, Bill Waldeck, 1409 Willard Place. I have some other remarks, but I'd like to congratulate the Northern Illinois Food Bank. I wish you a lot of luck in your collections this month. And just to remind everyone that on October 19th is the local crop walk for hunger. And some of that money does wind up with the Northern Illinois Food Bank. And also on behalf of Senior Home Sharing, which benefits somewhat from some of the food offered by the Northern Illinois Food Bank. Thank you. Over the last several months, you've had numerous planning meetings. You've had financial planning, strategic planning, stormwater planning. You've had some facilities planning, but you got more coming up. You've even had a planning meeting. There's many comments I'd like to make, but since time is limited, I'll commit those over the next couple meetings. The last meeting you held, when the mayor called for public comment, you got comments not only, well, not on the issues or the agenda, but on the conduct of the meeting itself. And I'd like to offer my evaluation of that particular meeting. And I urge everyone to shut off their regular so-called reality TV, Bachelors in Paradise singing, or America's Got Ninjas, whatever it is, and watch true reality TV, the village council meetings, where the taxpayers can become the biggest losers as members try to throw each other off the island that is the village council. This is my evaluation of the last planning meeting. My good friend, Mr. Lecren, suggested that the council should go on retreat. I disagree. Retreats are for people who want to come together and settle differences and work together. It's not for council majority to steamroll issues over independence and minority opinions. I don't think this council is ready for a retreat. The second public comment had me baffled, and I couldn't disagree more with it, because this is what I saw and heard. Staff was ready to discuss projects, priorities, and status. 5 council members came prepared to discuss that agenda, although I believe 2 were part of a political theater and had to deliver lines like, "I agree with Bob," and another blurting, "I'm disgusted." Commissioner Olson tried many times to bring the council back to the agenda, but with limited success. Mayor, you came prepared to facilitate the meeting agenda, and overall you did a great job addressing concerns in a professional and calm manner. That leaves Commissioner Barnett, who in my evaluation had a different
Mr. Waldeck,
agenda.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but obviously we'd love to hear comments, but I would ask that you please refrain from individualized comments on either myself or any of my colleagues. I understand you may have a point about the conduct of the meeting, but if you could perhaps try to avoid individualizing people or their particular comments. The whole thing was televised. As you point out, anyone can watch it and draw their own conclusions. But obviously, as a member of this august board for a number of years, we generally try to refrain from comments like that. And so I would beg your indulgence, and perhaps you could avoid that as much as possible.
Mayor, you allowed evaluation of the meeting by individuals. One individual attacked all the council members. Am I pointing out that that wasn't the case? That the agenda was hijacked by a particular council member. In my evaluation, that person had a different agenda, political theater in mind. His reference to upcoming elections not once but twice solidified my view. To me, and anyone who can view the meeting can come to their own conclusions. And I think the goal is to trash the work of the council and trash the leadership and process. Mayor, the theme was clear. The arguments and dialogue were weak. As a sign of weakness and lack of leadership, the great chicken debate fiasco was cited. Never mind that the usual council block was divided, and it was clear that the meeting prior to elections was to have no action because of upcoming elections. This particular commissioner was unable to provide a simple yes or no answer, even at a forum. This commissioner called for more leadership and less public input, and then reversed himself after you, Mayor, discussed further. That commissioner then complained that he wanted to see more done, more projects, more activities. When questioned about more projects and activities, the best example that you all wind up coming with was food trucks. I love food trucks, really? By the way, our taxpayers spent millions of dollars on TIFs to revitalize our downtown and Ogden Avenue, many of them restaurants. Do you really think that parking weenie wagons to compete with taxpayer investment is a good idea? Really? This commissioner then warned that to do more and bigger would require more revenue, that taxpayers should need to pay more as more revenue is needed. Then he reversed himself. So there was a lot of flip-flopping in the same meeting. That's why I was puzzled when the other individual, the other resident, Mrs. Murphy, commented. She said, she's a reputed supporter of this particular council member, and is strange that someone who appears at few meetings and comments even less should suddenly appear at this particular meeting with words, in her words, with 2 sick children at home, and adopt the political theater theme of being disappointed at the behavior of elected officials, when the only one who exhibited bad behavior was one commissioner in particular. Was this true opinion? Was this part of the night's theme of trashing the council? Or is this an opening salvo having to do with candidacies and entry into the silly season? Whatever it was, it certainly wasn't village business. And Mayor, I believe you were played. Thank you.
I'm not sure how to respond to that, Mr. Waldeck, so I'm going to ask for the next person's comments. While we have somebody next coming up, I just want to point out, going back to the first speaker with respect to historic preservation, I think that there's little disagreement amongst anybody in this room that the Edwards House, if at all possible, should be preserved. It's a question of how and in what way, and how does it impact the overall community, both in the short term and the long term. There are probably many of you in the audience who will recall that it was the Orange Lyman House that was threatened about 10 years ago that invoked an outpouring of opposition for it being redeveloped, and instead it ended up being saved through a private measure, and also led to the creation of this community's first and current historic preservation ordinance, one that did not exist. So while I understand that there are now some concerns about whether the tools are sufficient. We didn't even have those tools until the community spoke up last time. So let it not be underscored the power of the community's voice on these issues. They can be very powerful and they can lead to meaningful change. So while obviously there are things like due process and private property rights, the community can in fact invoke change. And whether we could, with a stroke of a pen, change the ordinance and save the house, that's a far more complicated conversation I think we could have here tonight. Not even sure what the path is that lies before it for sure. But I commend everyone's comments and their passion and support for what I think is an outcome we would all like to see. Good evening. Thank you for your patience in waiting for me.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. My name is Mike Foster. I live at 1640 Plum Court in Downers Grove, Illinois, and I've been riding Metra for the 19 years that I've lived in Downers Grove. And I was wondering if I could get an update on the platform reconstruction, as well as a caution to please, please, please don't start the second phase this fall, because you've been 5 months getting nowhere. And if you start in October, we'll be done in February, and I'm pretty sure we don't want to have the platforms in the shape that they're in now throughout the winter. And I'll sit down and wait for my answer.
Sure. Two things. First of all, the village is not doing the construction project. That's being done by, I believe, BNSF and or Metra.
Metra.
That's Metra that's actually doing the project. So believe me, if it was up to us, we'd like to have had it done a long time ago, but it's, as they say, outside our jurisdiction. That's comment number one. Comment number two, with respect to the status, I'm trying to remember what I've read about it most recently. I suspect Mr. Fieldman remembers more clearly than I do, so if I could ask him to be so kind as to give you a more precise answer to your question.
Reading right from our website,
I knew I read it
where you
somewhere.
could get an update on the Metra Main Street Station platform. Work is continued by Metra's contractor to replace the western half of the platforms. This phase of the project is planned to be completed by September 12th. After that time, the east half of the platforms will be closed, and work will begin on this section with a planned completion date of November 1st. We did express some concerns about starting the next phase with the same concern that Mr. Foster raised, which is, are you going to be able to get done in this construction season? That question posed to Metra, they answered with, yes, they plan on being done by November 1st.
Thank you. That's the official word from the entity and agency that's in charge of the actual project. Offline, we can have a conversation with you about some other opinions that we expressed on this project.
Well, come on down tomorrow and you can explain that to all of us.
I don't have to wait till tomorrow. I'm there every morning, and I'm there every day. In fact, it was because of Metra that I almost got here late tonight. So I'm a kindred spirit with you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, for being here tonight. Other questions or comments of a general nature?
We've got, I have some photos, and I don't know, can we load them and show them to you? Do we have time?
Sure, you have time.
I don't
yes,
have to give them to you.
Yes, you can. If it's going to take, I don't know, Mr. Baker, if it takes a few minutes to do it, maybe another speaker
Somebody
could
else
speak,
can
and
come
then
up
that
and
get
talk.
loaded so that it's all ready for you, if you don't mind, ma'am. If there's another speaker who would like to go while the audio-visual details are being set up. Good evening, sir. Ma'am.
Good evening. Excuse me. We're Linda and Robert King, and we live at 946 Maple, directly next door to the Edward House, and we've been there for 50 years. In fact, I've been living in the same block radius in Downers for the last 74 years. We strongly commend the work that Tom has been doing with trying to save this historic house, and we certainly hope that his work will find some way to save that house. We have a lot of strong memories about that house of the people, various people that have lived in it over the past 50 years. So give it strong consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
And then I've got these to use for you guys.
Hi.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening. My name is Judy Wolt, and I live at 908 40th Street. And our whole neighborhood here is to address some drainage issues and specifically a sidewalk that's going to be installed on our street. But first of all, I want to just put out a big thank you to Jim Tock, village engineer. He's been so helpful and so nice. So I want to put that on the record. He deserves a raise. So he's wonderful. We want to keep it brief, so I'm just going to talk about the reasons that I've seen why we don't need a sidewalk. We've been calling it the sidewalk to nowhere because we live on a dead-end street. We live in an LPDA. It's prone to flooding, so we basically live in a bowl and are surrounded by higher levels of, the neighborhoods are all higher than us. So just to give you a little background, and I emailed you guys last week, so you have a little bit of background there anyway. But anyway, so we live in LPDA. When I bought the house 16 years ago, we didn't know that this was, going to be an issue. Several of us have flooded over the last 5 to 6 years, and the photos that are coming up now, that's a photo of Daphne and John next to, that's their property at the very end of the dead end. All those trees were there, and that's the after photo of all the trees that have been removed. So in the last 5 to 6 years, our flooding issues have gotten much worse because hundreds of trees have been removed by builders, and they just keep coming in and removing and removing and removing. You can see there's basically nothing left. That's the picture I took yesterday. So anyway, it's cost John and I $75,000 plus in losses. It's cost the Wilsons $75,000 plus. The rest of our neighbors tens of thousands of dollars. So it's been very expensive, very time consuming. The huge increase in the new homes, it's just multiplying our flooding issues. So we want you guys to hear and recognize what's going on. We did go to the Plan Commission last year with this issue, and that was in July of last year, and the issue of the tree removal was never even recorded in the minutes. So we want to get that on record. Tree removal is huge. It's a huge issue. So you can see, this is where the sidewalk would end. If you put the sidewalk on our dead end, the sidewalk's going to end in a bunch of trees. So again, the bigger issue is flooding and drainage. The issue tonight is please don't put the sidewalk in right now. If you could just hold off, we would really appreciate it. And I do have studies, multiple studies from the EPA and other government entities that are in that green folder that you guys can take a look at and use as research. Study after study shows removal of trees does cause flooding, does add to stormwater runoff, and that villages and cities should be paying attention. When you guys are, taking a look at everything, we're really hoping you're looking at this because the village is supposed to be the village of trees, so we're hoping that you're really paying attention to this. Also, the sidewalk, we don't need it because nobody comes down our street. Nobody walks down our street. Kids don't walk down our street to go to school. There's no park at the end of our street. There's nothing there. There's a dead end. And a concrete sidewalk is an impervious surface. So you put an impervious surface, in front of our homes, and it's going to add to the runoff. I don't care how small. We need all the help we can get right now. We're ready to throw sponges out there when it rains. I mean, we had 5.5 inches of rain, 2 weeks ago? So these rain events are getting worse. They're getting bigger. They're getting heavier. We're thrilled that you're fixing our stormwater sewers. Thrilled. But what we understand is that it's going to maybe handle a 100-year rain event. What happens when it's a 150-year rain event, a 200-year rain event? We all know the climate's changing. We're getting these soaking rains more and more. So it's really been stressful for us for 5 to 6 years now. And then on top of everything else, the village is going to have to remove, there's a couple of pictures of the older trees in front of our homes. They're going to have to remove those trees to install the sidewalk. So again, mature trees. That picture, if you can go back, that picture was taken about 5 years ago. That property is just about ready to be built on. The builder has been removing trees for 5 to 6 days now, hundreds of trees. So that was 5 to 6 years ago. We can't even imagine what rain is going to look like and what the flow is going to look like because they're all above us. So again, if you want to flip a couple pictures up, that's right there. That's the property. That was the flow. You can see all the trees have been removed. If you continue on, there's another. That's yesterday. They've completely cleared that land, and a ginormous house is supposed to go up. So anyway, we understand that even with the new sewer system, our backyard drainage issues are going to continue. So we still have more costs involved. My husband and I, John and I, personally spent $9,000 last year just to put in extra drainage, and now we have to spend money on the backyards. So we understand that the new stormwater sewer system will not take care of those issues. So all of the neighborhood has to put money in and continue fixing. Because we all bought an LPDA. We didn't know. Again, we're hoping you compromise. I know you have a plan to put sidewalks on every street. Please prioritize. We're asking you. My aunt lives on Cornell. There is a park at the end of the street. They don't have a sidewalk. So prioritize. Put the sidewalk there first. Give us a year or two. Let us see how the new drainage works. Let's see if it works, because I keep hearing words like should improve, and we love it. We hope it does, but just we need a break. We're tired. We're very tired, and our bank accounts can't handle anymore. So we're really appealing to you as citizens, as taxpayers. I've lived here my whole life. We love it here, but we hate to see the trees continue coming down, and we hate to see a sidewalk go in that there's no rush for. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. Appreciate your comments, and also appreciate the emails and other information that you provided to the council in advance of tonight. Certainly we understand the issues, and it's really the confluence of three different things: stormwater, the maintenance of trees that are on property, and also the village's long-standing new sidewalk construction policy, and there's coming together in this project in something that is, in some respects, called bundling, and usually is a good thing. The stormwater project, clearly we're aware of the LPDA there, and this is a very important stormwater project that's going in at this point in time to try to bring some relief to the neighborhood. And words like should and whatnot are often used because there's no such thing as a guarantee until you actually build a project and you see how it works, but it's certainly designed to bring much needed relief to that neighborhood, and we're glad that at least that part of it is something everyone's in support of. The reason why the sidewalk's going at this point in time is just simply a cost-effective, smart efficiency that we try to do whenever we can. Is when a project is being done in a neighborhood and you're already ripping it up and you already have the equipment there and you already have the contractor there, the additional incremental cost of putting in the sidewalk as part of that project then is less to the taxpayers of the entire community than it would be if we waited a couple of years. So that's kind of the balance that we're looking at. I understand what you're asking us to do, but then come back later and do that project, say after 2 years, there's an incremental additional cost to the entire community. That's
So we're asking, don't even do it at all.
well, understood, and then of course we get to that project, which is it's a community-driven initiative.
Well, is the community going to pay for all the damages to our homes? No, they're not.
Well, obviously there can be a discussion about whether or not a sidewalk is going to cause the problem, or whether it's been what's there in the stormwater project is. And I'm not here to argue with you. I'm just pointing out what the reason is behind it.
No, we're not arguing either. We are just hoping you'll support us and really listen to us, because we have been through so much. We have physical ailments because of the cleanup and the damages. And I'm sorry, that's my husband.
No, understood, and I appreciate all that.
There are our homes, and we're
understood.
We don't feel safe.
No, understood, and I also understand
so
that.
Sidewalk to us, it really is not a big deal in the grand scheme of things.
Right, because all this existed before there was a sidewalk
We haven't
discussion.
had a sidewalk there for 60 plus
Right,
years.
and yet the problems were there. So the problems aren't the sidewalk. I get that.
Right, but we feel like it'll add. So we're hoping
Right.
it at least hold and it don't add at this point. And
Right, I understand.
give it a chance. So
No question about it. Everyone's
Good.
heard, listened, read the materials,
Wonderful.
understood the issue.
Okay.
I'm just, for those who are not as familiar with the background, just want to let them know, well, why are we putting the sidewalk in? It's because there's a 15, 20-year community-driven, not council-driven, all predates all of us. I don't think Commissioner Olson was even born yet when that happened. This one sidewalk on every side of the street, that was a community goal that's just taken a long time to implement. And it is what it is. The trees, that's a whole other issue, the removal of trees, and that goes back to the discussion that was mentioned earlier about government regulation of private use of private property. Periodically, we've had these conversations about whether or not there should be a tree preservation ordinance, or now we're actually hearing emails from people asking us to force people to take down dead trees on private property that have been devastated by emerald ash borer, for example. And as you might imagine, there's a real mix of very passionate views on that. There are some that say, yes, my neighbor should be forced to take down their tree, even though it might cost them $3,000 to $5,000 to do so. And yet there are those that might say, well, wait a second, why should the government be telling me to take down a tree on my own private property? So I just point that out as another issue that comes up from time to time that there are differences of opinion on within this community.
Well, we get it, but our community has the same opinion, and nobody else, all those other folks in the community haven't experienced what we've experienced. I don't know if any of you have experienced flooding, repeated flooding, damage to your home. Your family can't enjoy its home. You don't know when, every time it rains, you don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
Again, we feel like, and we know that you guys do, you have a lot of green efforts. I mean, if you have to put a sidewalk in,
permeable pavers. I mean, look at, you know, some green options, or do something else if you absolutely have to. But again, we need all the drainage help we can get. Every little tiny bit, we're all just scared. And the tree issue, I think, is a wonderful issue to bring up. I gave you some research there. There's wonderful research and reports from cities that are giving, like San Jose, California, they're giving credits to folks who keep trees when they build. They give them sort of, you know, little credits back on their tax bill or whatever. So again, just want you to consider all the options, and we're looking for a compromise.
Sure, and we actually have some of those incentives, but again, it's up to the individual to either exercise them or not.
Right.
And I've been to forums put on by the Morton Arboretum about tree preservation ordinances, but over the years, it's been something that the community, and I mean the community, all 48,000 people, don't always agree on. And so a lot of those issues tend to have
I would think the majority might agree with us on this. I would suspect, but...
Well, the issue is clearly stormwater.
Yeah.
And I understand that, and I think...
But it's affected by trees, it's affected by sidewalks, it's affected by large homes being built.
It's a complex issue, and in terms of what stormwater efforts have to be done to properties in new construction, there's an initiative that's underway right now with respect to that very topic. So we understand that it's a big issue, it's a big concern. Obviously, hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe not hundreds of millions of dollars, but I'll say a lot of money has been spent in the last few years on stormwater improvements.
Absolutely. We understand. And we're grateful that you're making these steps. So,
and I think your suggestions, understand your fears and concerns completely, and your suggestions about maybe some alternative ways of getting at the same place are good ideas and well worth considering.
Okay, and I have neighbors that want to talk, so...
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. Understood.
Thank you. And I won't repeat myself every time, I understand. Other questions or comments from members of the audience?
John Walton, I know 840th Street. Good evening. I think my wife pretty much covered everything. I think you pretty much covered everything. The only thing I have to bring up is the snow removal of the sidewalk. I'd like to know who's responsible for that. The 14 or 15 years that we've lived on 40th Street, we're usually the last to be plowed, sometimes to the point where we have to go out and plow ourselves. Now, we've got a bunch of older people on our street, people with physical limitations. I just want to know, who's going to be responsible for the snow removal. If the village is not going to do it, I don't think we're going to do it. So we're going to have sidewalks that can't even be walked on for several months out of the year. So I was just curious if there's an answer to the snow removal.
Sure. The answer, and the village attorney will correct me if I run astray, is the same as it is for a residential sidewalk anywhere. It's usually the responsibility of the homeowner whose right-of-way abuts that area. So, for example, it's no different than the sidewalks on Main Street, excepting the downtown, which is a different area because it's a special service area. But, for example, any other place in town, it's usually the homeowners. Right. If they choose to do it, if they don't.
Well, I think
you
could probably figure out what the answer is going to be on our part. Because, I mean, we've got enough going on to be worrying about snow removal on the sidewalk as well. So that's about all I have to say.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Thank you for being here tonight. Good evening, sir.
How are you? Unprepared, but I'll take a stab at it. Okay.
You look fully prepared to me.
All right. Pete Jenkner, 912 West 40th. I don't know, 31 years? Yep. 31 years. I'm also president and CEO of Isovac Products, and I'll tie into that as I go. But we make casualty isolation for chemical, biological, nuclear events, patient isolation, casualty transport items. So I'm a DOD contractor, and being a DOD contractor, they have what they call risk mitigation, and they have a configuration management plan that addresses all of the risk and risk mitigation that might come into play with any change you might make. So when I make a patient isolation unit to transport an Ebola patient out of Africa, I just can't decide to make a change. There's a process that you go through, and you prove that that technology or that slight change will not take effect during its issue or when the unit's being used. So I've got some experience in that, in what I'm talking about, and I have no issue with the sidewalk, no issue whatsoever. But in putting the drain in, which I'm all for, the storm sewers, we got a couple things going on, a lot more change, a little bit more risk in the clearing of 1.3 acres across the street, a new home going up across the street, and these storm sewers being put in. I guess what I'm asking for from you guys is to possibly postpone the sidewalk, okay? 4 homes, 4 houses that face that street where the sidewalk's going to go. And let's see how the drain performs. Storm sewers work successfully, then I think that we could take a look at the sidewalk. Not that I'm saying no to it, but I just think that now, in adding more risk to whether or not we have a proven system, I think we're jeopardizing what we're about to do, or the possibility of jeopardizing what we're about to do, without the engineering data to go behind it. Okay, because we're reducing what that soil can absorb by taking away that square footage. I hope that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Okay, so I guess what I'm saying is, yeah, let's just let it work, and then possibly take a look at it.
Understand your reasoning completely.
Okay, that's it. Thank you so much. Oh, and one more thing, bundling. I get it. You're right. You know what? You buy in volume, you get it done. But right now, if the plumbing contractor that's putting in the sewers was also going to do sidewalks, I could see where the bundling would come into play. But wouldn't that be a separate contractor putting the sidewalks in? So I don't see where bundling would reduce the cost to the taxpayer, the village, or anybody. Just curious.
The engineers can explain it better than I can, but there are advantages, maybe not as closely linked as what you're describing, because yes, there would be different contractors doing different things, but disruption to the street, disruption to the right-of-way, the excavation equipment, the replacement of the right-of-way sod, there's a number of different things that would have to be done just from doing the work. And again, engineers, public works professionals can speak much more
I understand.
Eloquently to this than I can, but experience has told us over and over and over again that there are benefits to trying to bundle things as much as possible, and this one is no different. Now, to actually quantify it, I couldn't do that as I sit here for you right now, but that's actually a fair question.
I was just curious, nor could I. Okay. Well, thank you for your time. Again, it's all about drainage. I was not prepared, but I hope I made some sense.
You absolutely did, and thank you for being here tonight and sharing your views. Good evening, sir.
Yes, John Frederick, 916 40th Street, and I've been there for 37 years with the wife and I and our family, and I just, no sidewalks on the street. It would dead end in front of my house into a fence, and it's a flooding area. Even with the new sewer in, the water's going to run across there, and that sidewalk will be underwater every time there's a rain anyway, but no one's going to be on it anyway because it's going to dead end there at that area. The problem hasn't always been. The problem started in 2006 when they cleared the trees off the lot on Highland Avenue, the 4015 lot that goes back. It's a flag lot. It's one of the last flag lots they were going to allow in Downers Grove, I think. So that's when the problem started, when they cleared that lot. The water found a new way to get from Highland Avenue to over by us, and it didn't stop. They have a new driveway put in that's with the permeable pavers, and when we had the last rain event 2 weeks ago, I could see the water coming down that driveway and coming down that fence line and coming right, there's a swale at the back of that lot, and filling that swale up, and now it's full of wood chips. They filled it with wood chips, and the thing had a dam in there, and it was kind of a mess, and the chips were all over my yard then. But everything that they did so far is okay. If this goes to the to this new sewer they're putting in, what worries me is next to that lot, this 4015 lot, there's 3 more undeveloped lots that are over 400 foot deep that are wooded, and they cut them trees down. You're talking about 1,000 trees, and that's just going to affect a lot more people than going down 40th Street with the runoff. Those are there's 3 lots next to that's right before Highland School. between the 4015 15 house and the Highland School. There's 3 undeveloped lots there that are just got a heck of a lot of trees on them. And 2, 3, 4 years from now, if they build on that, I don't know what's going to happen then. But there's got to be some maybe even better planning for things to come when they cut those down. Anyway, another thing with the sidewalk is the street and parkway is offset to the north. So the sidewalks are going to be pretty much in the middle of our front lawns a little bit. That's another thing that going to be a little unusual because the parkway on the south side of the street is much narrower. So that's all I have to say, and I just hope someone puts in a word for no sidewalks on 40th Street. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for being here and sharing your views with us. Good evening.
Good evening. Daphne Frederick, 916 40th Street. I'm just going to go touch lightly. My husband just basically went through most of the information that we both came with. Dealing with the sidewalks, it isn't that none of us don't want a sidewalk. It's basically we feel there's not a need for a sidewalk. And the reason for that is that flag lot that he mentioned, there is a swale. That swale empties out into our yard, our front yard. When that swale empties, which there has been a swale since 2006, and they had to redo it by a different builder just a month ago. And that's the swale that has the wood chips. When that, 2 weeks ago when we received our rain, the swale was filled to the top with wood chips flowing on the side, going into our front yard. And if there's a sidewalk, where's that water going? It's going to, I don't know if it's going to sit on that cement. Will it be able to flow the direction it's supposed to? They're both going to collide with each other, and that's my concern. I would hope that the water would be able to drain. But if it's sitting on cement and it can't move, what's going to happen? Then my lot, front yard, will be a pond. And then the water, I have no idea what's going to happen. And that, I'm very fearful of that. The other thing is, going back to what you mentioned about the idea was for every block to have a sidewalk in Downers Grove. Not every area is the same. What might be good for one neighborhood may not be good for another neighborhood because of circumstances. We're not cookie cutters. Everybody has its own personality, meaning the neighborhood itself. So what would work for, somewhere down, a couple blocks away from us may not work for us on 40th Street. And that's the idea. Look at what each neighborhood, what they're dealing with, what's the problem, and then make decisions. Just to put a sidewalk there because the village of Downers Grove wants to have every block to have a sidewalk, it may not be the best idea for every area. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us, and thank you for being here tonight. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Laura Wilson. I'm at 4030 Washington Street. I'm on the corner, so I'm with these guys. I just want to say that we really appreciate the storm drains, and we're very optimistic that they will indeed work. Our concern is that they are untested. And so I understand that it's part of the strategic plan to have sidewalks put into place, and I understand that that plan, while being done in earnest by honest citizens, perhaps may have been done without considering all of the circumstances in a given area. And so I agree with my neighbors that we should either delay the implementation of those sidewalks regardless of the cost, because we will pay the cost individually if those storm sewers fail again, which they have failed. We've flooded 5 times in 7 years, so we've had failures at an unacceptable rate. So I think it's reasonable to think that perhaps we should test the system before we add any more areas that are impermeable. I also think that if we cannot eliminate the sidewalks, then we really need to think about something that will allow drainage. You know, they will be underused. There are better places to put sidewalks in Downers Grove that really relate to safety of children or other things. And if we have to do it, let's at least put something that will drain. Because the deforestation has continued in our neighborhood. It will continue. Those are nice properties. They will be built on. Unless the village takes action, buys them, makes retention ponds, something, this water issue will continue to be a problem and possibly get worse. So please consider those thoughts. Thank you.
We will. Thank you very much. Please, good evening.
Hi. My name is Christine Martin. I didn't prepare anything at all, but I did get a flyer in my mailbox this weekend, and so I'm here just to give my support for the Edwards House. We live at 701 Maple Avenue. We have just moved in the last couple weeks. We purchased it a year ago. It was in complete decay, and so I can speak personally that we have worked a full year to restore this house. And it still doesn't look like it from the outside, but it does inside. It's breathing again. And the amount of people that come to our door or walk past the sidewalk and say, thank you for saving this house, is numerous. The majority of people that go past our house, and if we're outside, they're just really, they're just so encouraging, and they're grateful that we're saving it. So I think that a lot of people care about this, but we really have to speak out. I am a transplant to Downers Grove. We've been here about 8 years, and I don't mean to be rude against Downers Grove, but I'm appalled at the historic preservation here. Downers Grove rips down houses for mink mansions like a drop of a hat. And so I'm grateful for people like you, and I would love to join in with you that are trying to save these houses. So the Edwards House is amazing. This is not a house that's in decay, and I just really hope it doesn't come down, because it's a waste. And just like you said, our children are growing up here. History is important. We learn from history. And when you take it away and children don't see it and we don't see it, and you put a condo up there that's going to be cheaply built and come down in maybe 20 years, if it lasts that long. The ones in downtown, I know, those are very cheap. The door handles come off. You hear people talking about those. It's not good construction. Edwards House has sat there for over 120 years. And so I support you. So I hope you fight for this. So thank you.
Thank you. So the record, there's no petition before the village council with respect to anything to do with this property, but we appreciate the expressing the views and raising awareness of the issue. As I said earlier, the power of the voice of the public can be quite moving and motivating. Good evening.
Well, hopefully our voice is going to be heard. I'm Mary Kay Jankner, 912 40th. I agree with everything all my neighbors have said about the sidewalk. We are strongly against it. But one thing I do want to bring up that nobody talked about, the property right across the street from us is putting up 2 houses, not just one. So, again, we want to just wait to make sure the drainage, these 2 new houses that are going in are going to be properly put in with their drainage so that we can make sure that the system works before we implement the sidewalks. So I just wanted to officially go on record. Maybe someone could look at what they're doing over on their property to make sure that the 2 houses that will be going in are going to have the proper drainage that they need and not just flow back to our property. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming and sharing your views. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Sherry Nybo, and I live at 5253 Blodgett. I am also a transplant here to Downers Grove. My comments are regarding the house at 942 Maple. In fact, all of the houses on Maple Street, which are just beautiful. I grew up my whole life in the south side of Chicago, where unfortunately a lot of our history was not preserved. Every house looks like the next. You can't really tell the difference between one town and another. Chicago Ridge, Oak Lawn, they all tend to blend. What I noticed when I moved here is how beautiful this town is, and I believe it's the history and the character of all the houses that are unique, that have a history and a family connection to them that we don't really have a whole lot of on the south side. So I just wanted to put my comment in and say that this town is so beautiful, and I believe it's beautiful and one of the most desirable places to live because of its history, because of its uniqueness, and because of the beautiful homes that you guys have here. It's not like this everywhere else. You know, I grew up all over the south side, and this is one of the only towns that I've been to that is so seriously, it's just awe-inspiring how these houses are, how beautiful they are, the history and everything else, and I think that's what makes this town so beautiful and such a desirable place to live. I think once you start getting rid of your history and your beauty, it just brings you down on a level with everybody else and you no longer stand out. So I just wanted to let you know that. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing those thoughts with us. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Tom Weiler. I live at 709 Maple Avenue, and I would also like to express my support for the Edwards House. I know it's too late now to at least prevent the creep of commercialization down Maple with respect to that house, because it's already been a commercial use for a number of years. But whatever can be done to prevent that creep down Maple Avenue, I would appreciate the council's support for that. I don't know, and I understand that there's limitations on what private property owners can be required to do or not do with respect to their properties. If that house can be maintained as a commercial property in the form that it is, as a house, that would be better than putting up a new structure in its place. I also don't know, there was some talk about putting a multi-level condo in where the house is now. I don't know if that would require a zoning change or not. If it would, to put a multi-level condo there as opposed to the use that it is being used for now as a business, I would be opposed to any zoning change that would allow that. I'd like to keep it as it is, if it can't go back to being used as a private enterprise, as a private home. I live across the street from the Lyman, what used to be the Lyman House. I also live across the street from condos that went in on Maple Avenue in the 70s, which are totally out of character with Maple Avenue. And that's what we're trying to prevent. It's an old neighborhood with old homes, at least where the homes that were put in place where the Lyman House is, they're somewhat in character with the homes in the neighborhood already. So again, I would support a historic district. I know there's limitations on what the council can do, but I'd like to express my support for doing whatever we could to maintain the character of the Maple Avenue corridor. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Thank you for being here. Other questions or comments of a general nature? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Hillary Dank. I live at 433 Wilson Street. I'm here wearing a couple hats. The first is as co-chair of the League of Women Voters Program Committee, and I'd like to announce to the public and to the council, invite you to our September 17th meeting. It's going to be held at the Fire Department building at Main and 55th, and we're going to be looking at the ballot and the 5 proposals that will be on our ballot and educating the public about those proposals, as well as looking at our new voter registration and voter laws. And we hope we're going to have an excellent panel, including Bob Sarr from the DuPage Election Commission. And so we hope people will come out and learn more. It's at 7 p.m. The other reason I'm here is to support the work to preserve the Edwards House, and listening to people talking about stormwater issues too. And we think about the absolutely gorgeous old tree right in front of that house as well. And I've lived in this community since I was a child. I came back with my family and moved in 16 years ago to Wilson Street, and I have watched my neighborhood change. I have watched teardowns. I have watched lovely little bungalows replaced by McMansions, as they call them. And drainage issues have gotten worse and worse. Trees come down and houses cover up these very large lots with much larger homes. And we look at Maple Avenue and the character of Maple, and as you add these enormous square block buildings and take down these beautiful historic homes and the trees that surround them, you're not only changing the character of your neighborhood, but you're also creating more stormwater issues. And I think there's a lot of people who are concerned about the stormwater fee and seeing, well, have we changed our setback ordinances for houses that continue to go up in our neighborhoods? Are we looking at an ordinance about tree preservation and making it stronger and making it required that these trees are replaced to deal with these problems of runoff? I think as we ask more of our citizens, we should be giving more to our citizens. And so I'm very concerned about continuing to increase that stormwater fee and not really looking at all of these issues. So I hope that as leaders of our village, you will do this, that you will take up the mantle of your citizens here on the sidewalk issue, on the preservation of our historic buildings, and on our tree preservation, and take some action. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, all those topics have come up over the last 15 years. In some cases, there's been action, such as the creation of a historic preservation ordinance that didn't even exist before. The very ability to have a historic district is now something that the neighborhood can do, which, if you go back 10 years ago, even if you wanted to do that, you couldn't have done. At least now, that power resides within the neighborhood, and there is a path to move forward in that. It's spelled out very clearly in the ordinance. I know it's been read very carefully by a number of people, probably in this room. Tree preservation ordinance was also brought before this body in its various forms over time. And there's, again, all I can say is, without saying who was right or who was wrong, there was a big difference of opinion on the issue. And when I say difference of opinion, I mean amongst your neighbors. And also those neighbors as they're reflected up here. But that doesn't mean there can't be another discussion for it. The point about, in addition to investing significant dollars in infrastructure, maintenance, and new construction to address the stormwater issues in our community, we are looking, and it's been a priority action item for some time, looking at the issue of changing the stormwater requirements for Downers Grove to make them potentially more restrictive than what DuPage County currently requires. DuPage County, of course, has a stormwater ordinance. It was recently amended not too long ago. The question is going to be on the table very soon as to whether or not Downers Grove should be even more restrictive, the idea being not only invest in stormwater maintenance and infrastructure, but also try to take steps to reduce stormwater in the first place. We can't do anything about what falls from the sky. That's up to God, but we can try to do what we can once it hits the ground. So just so you know, those issues have been brought before the council over the last decade. Some are currently under consideration. Some were brought before and new legislation was passed. And in others, there was an agreement amongst the community. Perhaps issues like this will once again spark enough interest amongst the community so that the council and village staff can get a very clear view as to what the will of the community is. So thank you for sharing those words and those comments. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name's Josh Schweitzer. I live at 3627 White Eagle Drive. That's in Naperville. I know I don't live in this community, but I consider it my home away from home. I came here tonight with my great aunt and uncle, the Kings, and I wanted to voice my support for the protection of historical homes. I come here every Sunday for church at the First Baptist, and the reason I come all the way to your community, beyond my relationship with the Kings, is for the wonderful community, the beautiful scenery, and its historical presence. Looking around this room, I'm probably the youngest person here. I'm 23 years old. I've had the pleasure of seeing and appreciating these homes, but I deeply feel for those younger generations who will be robbed of that chance. There's a reason people visit and live in your community, and I can assure you it's not based on large obstructive structures. If you want to preserve the integrity of this community and its future outlook, you should seriously consider protecting these homes. Thank you.
Sure. Appreciate that. But keep in mind, though, even if there was an ordinance that allowed for some action, it would still be a collective decision or an exercise of government to basically take private property away from private individuals, which I know when it's your property is something that people usually recoil at the very notion of it. So it is a tough issue to balance, to whether the government can, does the community want to trust that power to the government to decide which of your homes should be preserved? Some people would say, well, no, I don't want you interfering with my property at all, but my neighbor, that's a different story. I just pointed out because it is something that people feel very strongly about. I think this is an easy conversation because we're talking about an unquestionably historically and architecturally significant property, and people feel very strongly about it, and justifiably so. But the real solution is how do we get to the outcome? Asking the government to take more power in order to determine what happens to your property may not be the answer. Let's see if there are other solutions and get to the same place.
Hello, Mayor, Council. Tom Nybo, 5253 Blodgett. We shed light a lot today on the Edwards house. I just wanted to give a couple of small facts of what we did over the weekend. We walked and handed out over 110 flyers in regards to the property. We walked the business district. The business district downtown supports our efforts and what we are trying to do, and they want to maintain the character, which will help promote their business as well. Also found and talked to a bunch of great residents along Maple who also voiced their concerns. No one out of both areas knows what's going on. They don't know that this could be torn down. They don't know the facts right now. You know, I mean, we're just trying to get it out there. And today I found out that there's a 56-unit condo building being proposed on the property. It's going to be 5 stories tall, and it's going to be taller than the parking garage. And that's going to impact traffic. That's going to impact the look of our town, as our residents have been talking about today. Just wanted to get that out there. Spoke to Lakota Group, and their vice president, who did the historical survey in town, would like to provide testimonial to all of you on why this house is significant to our community and why this one should be saved. And we'll, just give all the information and the facts in regards to the historical building and why they made it and why they suggested it as being significant. We do have other areas in town that we can develop. There's the old Standard Federal building on a corner of Gilbert Street and Prince that hasn't sold. We have condos where the old Reporter building used to be that aren't finished. And I'm sure there's an inventory in the condos that we have in town right now. So I just wanted to give a couple facts. Teresa covered a lot of good points, and so have several others tonight. But that's what I have from my perspective for this evening.
Thank you for sharing that update. Appreciate all your efforts. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Selma Moberg. I am here on behalf of the Edwards house. My husband and I live at 844 Maple, and we were one of the people that Tom Nybo visited over the holiday weekend, and he caught us in our backyard, and we were very unaware of what was going on, and we're so grateful for his passion, he who does not even live on Maple Avenue. Again, we've lived here for 22 years. My husband grew up in Downers Grove, and our children have gone through the school system, and the curriculum in the school system is one of that they share the history of Downers Grove. You have a picture of one of our founding fathers behind you on the wall, and I think he would be aghast at knowing that this beautiful piece of property is thought about maybe disappearing. We have worked for 22 years to preserve and restore our home on Maple Avenue, and we would very much appreciate that you take everything into account and not let the possibility of the house disappearing. So thank you.
Thank you. And again, there's no petition or any request for any action that's currently before the Village Council respecting this property. I just want to make sure everybody understands that. So there isn't anything that we could even weigh in on right now, but obviously I think there's a widespread desire and support for finding an outcome that would be one that would maintain what is universally accepted as a historically and architecturally significant home. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Scott Moberg, 844 Maple. As my wife mentioned, I grew up in this town. I've lived here all my life. And she mentioned the schools and what they teach our children in school, and that's character. And I think one of the issues that we're talking about here is character. Where are we going to go with the character of Downers Grove and the historic Maple Avenue? And all you have to do is look across the street from the house that we're talking about, and you can see that our government has supported historical preservation already in the fact that Lincoln Center exists. My neighbor across the street who grew up and was born in a historical home went to high school there. When I speak to my colleagues at work, members of church, and tell them where I live, they know where Maple Avenue is because that's their chosen route to get to town, to pass through our community. And they echo the same things that Mrs. Nybo said about the variety of the homes, the beautiful trees, the character. And I want the council to consider every option available to save the character of Maple Avenue. I thank you for your time.
Sure. No, thank you. And just to reiterate, there's at least three things this council has done over the last 10 years to support that effort. Number one, the Historic Preservation Ordinance has made it possible for property owners to actually achieve historic designation for property such that government can then regulate its future fate under that ordinance, and also open it up for opportunities for grants and other sources of revenue to help offset the cost of maintaining and continuing to support a historic or architecturally significant home. Number two is the creation of the opportunity of the historic district. So if all the folks on Maple Avenue were to come forward with a petition to turn Maple Avenue into a historic district, that's something the council, and through the procedures prescribed in the ordinance, would have to take up. That's been on the books for some time, and it's been suggested more than once, of not just Maple Avenue, but other areas, that perhaps that should be something that's pursued. Number three, I think the council's support of historic preservation was also most recently seen in its support of the preservation and relocation in conjunction and partnership with the Downers Grove Park District of the 1846 Blodgett House, which was also destined to be destroyed, but through the efforts of the community, the historic Downers Grove Historical Society, Pierce Downer Heritage Alliance, the Downers Grove Park District, and also the Village of Downers Grove, it exists today to be enjoyed for generations. So there's no question about it that this community, both public and private, not-for-profit and for-profit, have come together when the time has called to raise voices and think creatively and innovatively about how to preserve that balance between tradition and progress.
If I may?
Sure, only if there's someone else who hasn't spoken yet.
I just wanted to say, it's 51% of the landowners in that area. You kind of said all of the landowners. It's not all. It's only 51% of the people in the district. So.
Sure.
Because people might be listening on TV.
No, you're right, and having had a hand in drafting that ordinance, I know exactly what you're talking about, but let's put it this way, if all the people put forward that petition, we wouldn't have to worry about the 51%. But you're right, it's 51%. But as I said, the details of the ordinance and how a historic district can be created is spelled out in the ordinance. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Going once, going twice. Okay, well, thank you, everyone, for being here tonight, for all your questions and comments of a general nature. Now we have some bills to pay and some business to get to, so bear with us, and there will be opportunity for public comment with respect to each of these items as well. We'll move then to item 5, council member reports. This is an opportunity for members of the village council to share with the community various goings-on or other items of interest. Start to my left with Commissioner Barnett tonight.
No report, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Olson?
Just wanted to report, and it's not in our community, but it is an organization that supports us. The DuPage Pads is having their annual 5K, 10K race in Wheaton on Saturday at 8 o'clock. I ran it last year. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to make it this year, but it's a great event supporting a great cause. It supports...
Is the race even going to go on if you're not there?
Well, it's in Wheaton, so they can go on without me. So. But it's a great event, and I hope folks can support that event. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. We'll move over to Commissioner Jose.
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Rankin.
No
Good evening. Commissioner Durkin. Commissioner Newstead.
Mayor, this weekend we will have our recycling event, electronics recycling event, in the back parking lot here at Village Hall. It is an event that is in Downers Grove. And on September 20th, we will have the recycling extravaganza, which is not just electronics, but all sorts of household items. That will be held at Lot H at the Belmont Road train station, September 20th. Lots of information on the front page of our website for those two great events that our municipality puts on as a public service to our residents. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. I will gladly report. I have no report at this point in time. We'll move right to item 6, public hearings. We have no public hearings tonight, so we'll move to item 7 on our agenda, which is our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to any of the items on our consent agenda tonight? Questions or comments from any members of the village council? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Neustadt?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, consent agenda passes unanimously, and that brings us to item 8, our active agenda. We have one item on our active agenda tonight, that's item 8A. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance that would authorize a third extension of a final plan development amendment for planned development number 31 for additions to the existing parking garage and the construction of a new 6-level parking garage at 3500 Lacey Road?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments from any members of the audience on this item? Are there any questions or comments from members of the village council on this item? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Neustadt?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that matter passes unanimously. That brings us to the end of our active agenda and to item 9, our first reading or our workshop agenda. We have 4 items on our first reading or workshop agenda tonight. All of them will be discussed here in chambers tonight. And as a reminder, these are items that are being presented for discussion and consideration only. There will be no vote taken on any of these items at this point in time. As is customary, return items of this nature over to village staff for presentation. So I'd like at this point in time to introduce Village Manager David Fieldman for the presentation of these items.
Thank you, Mayor Tully. The first 2 items concern the annexation and rezoning of the property at 332 to 334 39th Street. And here to present information on these 2 petitions is Stan Popovich, our Planning Division Manager. Stan.
Good evening, Mr. Popovich.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you, Mr. Fieldman. As Mr. Fieldman noted, I'll be discussing the first 2 items concurrently here on the active agenda. This is the annexation and rezoning petition for 332 and 334 39th Street. The property is located generally in the northeast area of the village, primarily here at the northeast corner of Fairview Avenue and 39th Street. The property is currently unincorporated, but is adjacent to incorporated Downers Grove and within the village's ultimate planning jurisdiction and planning boundary. The property consists of 2 lots of record. Lot 10, which is the eastern lot, has an existing single-family home located on it. It is heavily wooded. The second lot is Lot 11. It's on the corner of Fairview and 39th Street. That lot is undeveloped and is a vacant wooded lot at this time. The applicant is requesting annexation. As I've noted, the property is contiguous and is within the village's ultimate planning jurisdiction. Lot 10 currently receives village water and receives village fire protection services. The petitioner wishes to construct a home on Lot 11, which would require village water. Upon annexation, this is the annexation plat here that'll show the property to be annexed along with Fairview Avenue adjacent to the property. The property was automatically rezoned to R1 upon annexation. The current zoning ordinance, if there's lots that are non-conforming with lot area and lot width and lot depth requirements, they're required to be consolidated. We see this a lot through administrative lot consolidations. As such, to maintain 2 buildable lots, they are requesting a rezoning to the R3 zoning district, which is residential detached house 3 district. The R3 lots are more consistent in size with those other R3 lots that the village sees. Staff believes the proposed annexation and rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan identifies single-family residential in these areas, and that's what will be in place should this be approved. It would be single-family homes. This will provide for a variety of dwelling unit sizes and housing types as well. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those for you tonight.
Thank you very much. First, are there any questions on this item from members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Commissioner Olson?
Hey, one of the things we heard about tonight was tree preservation, and this, when you noted and looking at the imagery, this is constructing a house on a wooded lot, so there would be stormwater impacts. Do we have any sense of if there are existing stormwater issues on this property that are going to be impacted by any proposed redevelopment not redevelopment, but proposed development, that we would have to then possibly incur cost in the future by annexing this property?
Since this property is unincorporated, I'm not sure that we've received any inquiries specifically about these two parcels of land, but I can speak to staff and our village engineer and public works department to see if we've had any public concerns about stormwater in this area.
Okay, thank you.
And right now, the item is just the annexation request as well as the rezoning upon annexation.
That's correct.
Both before us.
But my reason for asking the question is, if by annexing this property, we're then responsible, we then take some responsibility for some of the stormwater issues if we're exacerbating that and adding additional cost burden to the village.
Could also be an opportunity to reduce it, too.
Absolutely. So that's why I thought of the question given the public comment that we just received. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from the Village Council? The one thing I'll point out is I don't see any reason to deny the annexation request, and the request to rezone is entirely consistent with the surrounding zoning of primarily R4 and R3. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you, Mayor. The next item is consideration of an ordinance authorizing a special use for the expansion of a veterinary care business in the 4900 block of Forest, and Stan will also present this item.
Thank you, Mr. Fielman, Mayor and Council.
Welcome back.
Yes, thank you. Long time no see. The item before you tonight is 4945 Forest Avenue, a special use request for a veterinary care clinic. 4945 Forest Avenue is generally located in the center of the village, just to the northwest of the downtown core. This is an area map here of the downtown. The property here, shown and outlined in green, is just north of Warren Avenue and Forest Avenue on the east side of the street. The property is currently improved with a 1.5 to 2 story formerly residential building that was being converted to a veterinary clinic on the first floor with a vacant apartment on the second floor. This shows the existing site. The existing 2-story portion of the building is in red. The rest of the building is in a 1-story blue here. What the petitioner is proposing to do is proposing to convert the entire building to a 2-story building and add an addition onto the northeast corner, portion of the building. The petitioner is also proposing to add a little bit of green space into the front, proposing to stripe parking in the front and the rear of the building. Currently, it's an unstriped parking lot. Additionally, relocate the dumpster to the back of the building and screen that as well per village requirements. The petitioner is proposing to undertake these items to expand their veterinary care clinic. This shows proposed first floor on the bottom and a proposed second floor on the top. The new portions of the building are shown in purple. The existing footprint of the building is shown in tan. The second floor will undergo a significant renovation as the spaces need to be relayed out to provide offices for the veterinary staff on the second floor. Additionally, the first floor will be improved to provide better kenneling services and better services for the residents of Downers Grove that come to have their animals taken care of at this location. These are the proposed building elevations that show the improvements. The west elevation, the front elevation is in the lower right, and then the side elevations, north and south on the left-hand side, and the rear elevation at the upper right-hand corner. They do meet all the design requirements of the Downtown Business Zoning District. Staff believes that the proposal is consistent with the zoning ordinance. A veterinary care clinic is a permitted special use in the Downtown Business Zoning District. Staff believes the proposal is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The plan promotes a variety of uses in the Downtown Business District. Staff believes this is a variety, unique use here in the Downtown Business District. Staff notes in the comprehensive plan that converted homes serve an important role in providing a transition from the central core of the Downtown Business District to the residential and downtown transition areas that surround the downtown core. Additionally, we believe modernizing existing commercial buildings to remain competitive is important, and we believe that this modernization will do that to provide the type of services and type of space that the veterinary care clinic needs to remain competitive in the marketplace and to provide a good service for the residents of Downers Grove. If there's any questions at this time, I'd be happy to answer those for you.
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation. Questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to this proposed item? Any questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Commissioner Newstead.
Thank you, Mayor. This looks like a great project. I really appreciate the fact that they're kind of sprucing up the outside as well as the building itself, following our guidelines for the dumpster enclosure. Seems like a very small thing, but to us and to the downtown, it's actually a very important part of our process and what we look for in these kind of redevelopments. So, looks great. Good luck, and I look forward to seeing the building.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Looking at the project here, as was noted, it's an existing special use. It's not changing the proposed use. It's a modest expansion of what's already there, yet still falls well within all the various bulk and setback requirements for this zoning parcel. To the extent that we can assist a business in continuing to succeed, and certainly all the criteria under 28.12.050, I got to get used to those new numbers, appear to be met here. Sounds like I agree with what Commissioner Newstead said. It's a good project. Other questions or comments? All right, very good. Next item, please.
The final item on tonight's first reading agenda is an ordinance that would approve stop signs at the recently reconstructed intersection of Elmwood, Randall, and Blodgett. We're happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Good evening. I gotta say hi at least. Good evening. Any questions or comments from the members of the audience? Yeah, it's sort of like in SAG. If you have a speaking line, you get paid more than if you just show up on camera. So we had to make sure we completely set something. Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? No. Hearing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was the most efficient presentation.
That was Andy Sikic, our Assistant Director of Public Works. That is our first reading tonight, Mayor.
All right, you got to give him screen credit now. All right, thank you. That brings us to item 10, the Mayor's Report. I have nothing additional to add at this point in time. We'll go right to 11, our Village Manager's Report. Mr. Fieldman.
Our sign ordinance compliance efforts are going very well. We have now reached over 94% of properties in compliance with the sign code that was amended in 2005, leaving only 65 properties that have not yet made an attempt to comply. We will continue with our facilitative approach to compliance with our sign regulations. For more information on this, you can check out the manager's report, which is on our website for this council meeting. That ends our report tonight, Mayor.
Thank you. The way you described it almost sounded like you have a blog going. Check out my blog at managerreport.com. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 12, the Village Attorney's Report. Ms. Petrarca, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. 3 items to present this evening. The first is an ordinance authorizing a special use to permit the expansion of a veterinary care business at 4945 Forest Avenue. An ordinance annexing 332 through 334 39th Street to the Village of Downers Grove. And an ordinance amending the comprehensive zoning ordinance of the village to rezone the property located at 332, 334 39th Street. It will all appear on next week's active agenda. Thank you, Mayor. That is all.
Very good. Thank you. And last but not least, that brings us to item 13, council member new business. And we do have an item tonight from a previous request and direction from the council to look into a potential revision, text amendment to our sign ordinance, which was just reported on by the village manager. I don't know, Mr. Fieldman, if you want to introduce this?
Yes, please, very quickly. The question before the council tonight is, should you direct your staff to prepare a zoning ordinance amendment that would be forwarded to the Plan Commission for consideration and then ultimately come back to this village council for consideration and potential action? The amendment was originally brought forth by a conversation by Levenguth Moving. This amendment that you're considering tonight, whether to take action on, would allow signs to face a railroad right-of-way. Currently, signs facing a railroad rights-of-way are not permitted under our ordinance. The approval of the amendment, should it happen after going through the Plan Commission process and back to Village Council, would not necessarily address all of the concerns presented by Levenguth Moving, because there are other issues that would have to be rectified on that existing wall sign regarding size and the fact that it's painted on a wall. However, the issue before you is, should you direct your staff to prepare an amendment for Plan Commission and ultimately Village Council consideration at a future date? We're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. And let me just add, before we get into further discussion on the point, that I think that this was raised and then supported by a number of members of the council during a prior new business segment of our agenda in response to concerns about what is the realistic difference between signs facing a public roadway right-of-way or a rail right-of-way, understanding that oftentimes businesses will choose to locate along a thoroughfare, if you will, because of the traffic, and what's the difference between that and a rail right-of-way, particularly given the volume of rail traffic that carries a lot of commuters along it. And I think there were a number of folks that said, well, that's a fair question. Why don't we put that together, see what it looks like, and then decide whether or not that's something that should be put forward for consideration by the Plan Commission as a potential text amendment revision to our current sign ordinance, just by way of introduction. I'd be happy to keep going or ask members of the council what their views are now that we've sort of seen it put together before it, and whether there's support for, I guess do we need to have a motion to actually,
Yes, please.
If there was support, we would need a motion and a second and a vote with respect to whether or not to prepare such an amendment for submission to the Plan Commission for consideration. So I'll open it up for discussion. Commissioner Olson?
Mayor, might I propose that we have a motion and a second first and then have discussion? Does that seem reasonable?
I mean, we can do that, or we can discuss it because we are under new business, and this was something that was included on the agenda as new business. So I think we can discuss it without that necessity. Obviously, if somebody wants to make the motion and second it.
That's fine. Then I'm happy to
But
discuss it.
I think we can because it was previously put on the agenda. It was noticed as an item of new business, so I think we're free to discuss it as it is, and I'm getting head nods from the smarter legal mind in the room.
Excellent. Well, then I'll discuss it. This is something that I brought forward a few weeks back, and I think we've seen through the staff report and appreciate the staff's work on this in a short time frame that this amendment wouldn't address the specific concern, all the concerns that were brought forward by Laban Guth. However, I think it's a very worthwhile endeavor to pursue. I think that it's important that we do allow signs along rights-of-way, including the railroad right-of-way, so would support moving forward with this, even though it does not address all the issues that Laban Guth is having with the sign. I think that that perhaps is another conversation. I personally would support letting them keep their sign as is, but I think that's a separate conversation, as the managers pointed out. I think this amendment is reasonable. I think it's a fairly minor change, and I would support moving forward.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other thoughts? Commissioner Rankin?
Well, I empathize with the plight of a small business owner. Having a sign that he claims generates leads, I can appreciate that. I also understand the monetary value of good advertising and advertising that pays off. And I don't necessarily disagree that a sign shouldn't be on the railroad right away. However, I think there's been many opportunities for this business owner to come and express his opinion. I think we've had lots of businesses that have been impacted by the sign ordinance, and they're going through the channels that are in place, and they're submitting for a variance through the ZBA, and they're following that process. So although I don't necessarily disagree with the concept of what Mr. Leibenguth, or Leibenguth Builders, I should say, was bringing forward, I don't know if it's fair to the people that are following the process to create a new process for someone just because they asked us. So I'm not going to be supporting it, and thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Anytime, Commissioner. Other thoughts from members of the council? I'll just add my 2 cents. This is something that when it was described to us by the Leibenguth Company when they came up here and expressed a dilemma, the main driving reason was, well, what's the difference between a public roadway right-of-way and the signage that permits that for the reasons that it's allowed, and a rail right-of-way? And candidly, I'm not so sure in the lengthy discussions with respect to the sign ordinance way back when. I'm sure someone will correct me on this if I'm wrong. I don't know if that was specifically addressed or not. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But it seemed like a fair, sensible question to ask as to why should they be treated differently. And as I thought about it, I really couldn't think of a reason to treat them differently. And therefore was interested in seeing what the amendment might look like. And now I've looked at it, and I continue to think that it makes sense that a public roadway, driveway right-of-way, or railroad right-of-way receive the same treatment under our sign ordinance. And so I would be in support of having that go forward for consideration by the Plan Commission. Certainly, would have to go through the Plan Commission process. There'd have to be a recommendation. There'd have to be input from the community, businesses, public, private, and so on and so forth. And eventually, it would come back to the council before anything would happen anyway. So I wouldn't want to forestall that process to have it more richly discussed before saying, no, I wouldn't consider it, just personally. I am sympathetic, or empathetic, I should say, to the concerns that have been raised by some about, well, the sign ordinance has been working well, a lot of people are coming into compliance, and we shouldn't make any changes because some people may have come into compliance, and this person is asking for change. I understand that, but there were a number of topics that were discussed tonight where folks have suggested that even long-standing policy might bear an update or a revision. And things are never completely static. They're always open to potential revision where it makes sense. In my opinion, this is one that makes sense. The timing is what the timing is. But I think that we have long said, this body and prior iterations of it, that where the sign ordinance, where there's a revision to the sign ordinance that makes sense and is justified based on all the appropriate factors, and we've said this to the business community many times, we would consider revisions to it, modifications, whether it's a geographic difference or it's a changed circumstances or something that just makes sense, and it's not singling out a business, but it's treating a category one way because of the unique character or whatever it might be. I think this is an opportunity to demonstrate to the public and to the business community that we mean what we've said over those years, and where something does make sense, we'll at least consider it and potentially make that change if all indications are that it does make sense, notwithstanding the fact that maybe 2 years ago when the regulation was the way it previously was, that someone may have acted in reliance upon that. The laws change all the time, whether it's stormwater or tree preservation or historic preservation or whatever it might be. And to say that somebody 2 years ago, well, I built my house under this rule and now you're changing it, that's not fair to me, so therefore you should never change it. I don't think that's the way we ought to be. I think we ought to be dynamic and we ought to make changes where they make sense. And again, I'm not necessarily saying that this is, at this point, something I'm ready to vote on, but I would support it going forward to the next stage, or at least it was considered, fully vetted through the Plan Commission process, and then came back to the council as something that, with the ordinary input and recommendations that we receive for any text amendment, we would have the benefit of voting on. So I'm in favor of at least going to that stage. But again, I'd be interested in hearing what others think.
I think, Mayor, at some point, we will have this text amendment back in front of us. I don't believe it would change very much from its literal current standing as we see it today. I think the lack of comment until now is kind of a telling point in where the support may or may not lie for this text amendment. Personally, I think that fairness is not always easy, and it's not always something that we should be judging upon, but the sign ordinance has been in effect since 2005 with a 2-year extension, so altogether 9 years of potential compliance. We just heard that the 94% compliance is a great number, which allows us to understand that in this period of our sign ordinance enforcement, where we're actually enforcing now, my opinion, to change the ordinance at this point or to amend the ordinance would be it would be a move that would send the wrong message to the folks that did come into compliance over that 9 years of time. I think that this particular sign at the moving company, as well as other signs that are still not compliant and ones that have come into compliance, have made a choice. It's been around. We have done everything as a community organization to put the message out about the sign ordinance compliance and why we have it out there. And we're now at a point well after the compliance deadline to try to create an amendment. I appreciate the value of signage in our community. I appreciate the desire of this particular business owner to try to save or create a way to keep his sign. As Commissioner Rankin said, any possible lead to benefit a Downers Grove business is very important, not only to that business but to us as well. But in this case, we have, in my opinion, given ample time to create, find, or even go through the process, ZBA, or even back to this body at some point to try to get an amendment underneath the actual deadline structure and timeline. I will not support this ordinance tonight. I think that we have to get to 100% compliance, or at least to a point where we know where we're at with the sign ordinance, and then the sign ordinance rising to perhaps a high priority action item by the request of 4 members of this council for review or look at, would benefit our community. But right now, I'm not ready to make that change.
Thanks,
you, Mayor.
Commissioner. Other thoughts or comments? I mean, obviously, at some point, we would need a motion and a second. For the record, I can't do either one of those. Someone else would have to make a motion and a second for us to then take a vote on it. But we'll get some more comment before we get there.
Thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner Jose?
I don't want to repeat anything necessarily that my colleagues have said, but I think that the idea that we take a larger look at the sign ordinance and whether there are things that might make sense in terms of tweaks to that would be a more wise course of action rather than taking sort of one-off things and looking at them in what feels like a bit of an ad hoc manner. If there are changes that need to be made, let's consider them, but let's do it in a holistic approach so that we're not doing it just when one particular business owner or resident or whatever it might be comes forward with their individualized concern.
Understood, although those are often the things that spark change in the first place. Sure. I can think of a number of examples, but I understand your point. Other questions or comments?
Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Olson, please.
So what I've heard is a bit, from my perspective, I think the message, there was a comment Commissioner Newstead pointed out about the message to the business community. And I think the message to the business community over these last few months has not been positive. My assessment, I think that I would support what Commissioner Jose suggested, a whole-scale discussion of the sign ordinance. If you talk with folks involved in economic development, they will say the sign ordinance has become an issue for Downers Grove, or at least some will say that. Some may disagree. But given that I have heard that feedback in the community from our own residents and residents who are involved in that area, it's a strong concern of mine, first of all. Second of all, I think, so that's a much broader comment on the message. To bring it back to what we're here tonight on, I think that the message that we would be sending by moving this through the process is a message of we are listening to the community. I would note that this amendment, as it's currently written and drafted, and as I propose to move this amendment would not address any current sign in the village of Downers Grove, if I'm reading the staff report correctly. Their Lebenguth sign would not be compliant. It's more of a matter of principle, but I do think it sends the right message, and I think that message is this council, this body is open to hearing residents, to hearing business owners in this case, and to responding to their concerns. And I'm greatly concerned that when we, for example, don't allow businesses to utilize one of their most important attributes of advertising. For example, we don't allow Fry's Electronics to advertise in front of 300,000 people that drive by every day on I-88 and I-355. I think that's outrageous. So I think this is a message that we are sending to the community. It's just a small thing. I think it's more of a common sense type of change. But I think it also sends a broader message that this council is friendly to business, is willing to listen to change, is willing to listen to suggestions. And I would hope that whether we go through a comprehensive process or address things on more of a one-off concern, that we might be able to address some of these concerns from the business community and balance some of those needs, especially as we consider different corridors of town. So, very broad comments, but in that light, I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to draft a text amendment to the zoning ordinance that would permit wall signs on building facades that face the BNSF right-of-way.
Is there a second? Motion fails for lack of a second. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the discussion. It's a good example of how the new business process is supposed to work. So if we came up, it was worked up, provided to the staff. They gave us some important information. We had a good discussion on it. Ultimately didn't go forward, but a good example of how the process works. That being said, are there any other new items of council business for any members of the council? Commissioner Newsted.
Mayor, I tell you, a very important new item tonight to discuss with my colleagues and with our residents. Tonight is a very special day in our district. It is the birthday of Commissioner Rankin. I'd like to formally and for the record wish Becky a very, very happy birthday and hope that your day has been celebrated in style. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. That motion I will second.
Thank you for the cupcakes. That was very
I don't know what you're talking about.
nice.
Cupcakes.
Thank you, Commissioner, and happy birthday.
Thanks.
Any other items of new business for any members of the council? Hearing none. That brings us to item 14. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Can I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Newsted.
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin.
Aye.
Commissioner Jose.
Aye.
Commissioner Olson.
Aye.
Commissioner